Good morning. Today is Thursday, the 7th day of Kislev, and we continue the Tanya in Kuntres, Acharon, the fifth part of the Tanya, the last part. We're almost finishing the Tanya soon, and this is in the fourth essay of the last part. Begin once again with tzedakah, kadoila tzedakah, shemekareves esa geula. So, in the last few days, the Alter Rebbe discussed in this part, in this essay, a number of things of why mitzvahs of action is more important than the spiritual love and fear to Hashem. In other words, if a person would think that in order to connect to Hashem, he has to have this feeling, emotions, and go into meditation. It's all nice and it's all good and it's important, but not even close to the importance of doing the actual mitzvahs. And today the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain further in this about what happens when a person has the feelings without the mitzvahs. He says, he's talking about the elevation versus the descent. Elevation meaning to elevate and to remove yourself from this world, which basically is talking about the concept of giving your soul to Hashem. And the question is that a good thing, to giving your soul to God? We find throughout the history that this is Mesiras Nefesh, this is the peak of what a Jew can achieve, is to give his life to Hashem, is the top. Rabbi Akiva, he was one of the 10 martyrs. And he said that his entire life he was waiting for this moment. He says, when will this moment come that I will be able to fulfill this ultimate v'ahavtas Hashem elakecha, love Hashem with all your heart, with all your might, even if your life is required, if you're demanded to give your life up. And he achieved that level. And the question then is, if that is the ultimate goal, we know the story of Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aaron. When they died, their soul departed by also a similar concept, by experiencing the greatness and the closeness of Hashem. By them, it was considered not a good thing. It was considered a sin. So what's the difference? Why by Rabbi Akiva it was considered a big mitzvah, and by them it was considered a sin? And of course the answer is that by them, it was about them. It was about their desire to connect to Hashem. It wasn't what Hashem wanted. Hashem wants you should bring the godliness down into this world. That's the ultimate purpose of the creation of the world. But Rabbi Akiva, it wasn't that he chose to do it. It was when Hashem says, when God says that you should be ready to give your life in certain instances, if your connection with Hashem is threatened, you should be able to give up your life for that. And that is a commandment of Hashem itself. So the Alter Rebbe is going to explain this, that this is the difference between doing the mitzvahs and focusing just on the awe and love and the spiritual emotions, because this is about removing the lights, and that the Alter Rebbe says, he calls it chas v'shalom, that's not a good thing. To remove the lights from this world is something which negates the purpose. Hashem wants us to bring down the godliness down into this world. And there is the two types of elevation. There is elevation that you elevate yourself with the world, meaning the light with the vessels, what he calls it. And that is when you do that, it elevates the world itself also. That is a good thing. And that also is not a permanent thing, it's a temporary thing. You elevate in order to bring down more godliness, which this is the system, the way it works. You go up, go up and go down. But when you elevate, removing the light from the world, that is not a good thing. So ultimately, what is better, to die for God or to live for God? Obviously, we need to live for Hashem. And this is the mitzvahs, the physical mitzvahs, the mitzvahs of action. Let's look inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, Ubar mikol dein. Besides all of the above mentioned ways that we explained, that the action-related mitzvahs are superior to intellectually aroused love and fear of Hashem. Afilu b'neshama de'atzilus, af she'i mikelim de'atzilus. Even in the case of the soul of Atzilus, though it derives from the vessels of Atzilus, and as we explained, that the vessels of Atzilus, what comes from the vessels of Atzilus, brings the very essence of the light down into this world. We explained it in yesterday's class. And equally also in the case of Nefesh and Ruach, which derives from the vessels of Yetzirah and Asiyah. So the Nefesh and Ruach is the lower levels of the soul that derive from the lower worlds, the vessels of Yetzirah and Asiyah. In Erechimu, or the Chilu Rechimu Sichlim Shalaem, Me'oirerim Gamkein, Bekelim, the Yetzirah, Asiyah, Bechinas Allah, Mimata Lemaila, Besosa de Lesat. Their intellectual fear and love, which themselves are a mode of elevation, also arouse in the vessels of Yetzirah and Asiyah a state of upward elevation through an arousal initiated from below. What is he saying? That, again, focusing on the emotional connection, the fear and love to Hashem alone, without connecting to the mitzvahs of action, just the emotions, this arouses an elevation that the soul wants to depart, wants to go up, wants to separate from the bottom, from the vessels. And that says the Alter Rebbe, b'chinas istalkus levad chas v'sholem. However, this is a state of departure alone. God forbid. What's God forbid? Alter Rebbe says that is something which God forbid. To depart from this physical world. So the effect on the vessels is that they depart upward and do not fulfill their purpose. Just as love and fear that do not descend into expression in mitzvahs are also in a state of elevation and departure. And love and fear do descend into mitzvahs. When love and fear do descend into mitzvahs, they enhance the effect of the mitzvahs in drawing down divine light. So that depends how you use the love and fear. And again, we learned in Tanya many places how it is important to have the love and fear, not just doing the mitzvahs mechanically, but those love and fear, these emotions are only there to serve as wings to allow us, the mitzvahs, to soar higher, but not as a goal in and of itself, just to love and fear without mitzvahs, chas v'shalom, because that causes the opposite. Continues the Alter Rebbe says, "Aval b'chinas amshocha milemaylo lemato al yidei mitzvahs ma'isi is dafke la'amshich v'kelim." But eliciting from above downward is affected only by means of the practical mitzvahs, which draw light into the vessels. Ubechitzonius hakelim dafke, shechitzonius ha'elyon yered lemato, upnimius hatachton oile lemato, and specifically into the external aspect of the vessels, so that the external aspect of the superior level descend, while the internal aspect of the inferior level rises. And this continues the Alter Rebbe, "V'zeu shekosu b'zoya parshas pkudei anizka le'el de'is sidur chula." This is the intent of the above quoted Zoya in Parshas Pekudei, that it says that there is an order of elevation and an order of descent. You need both. You need the elevation and you need the descent. But there is an order. There's times when you need this and times when you need that. You cannot have one without the other. Both are needed for the divine purpose, meaning for man's spiritual service, the elevation and the elicitation. By elevation, the elevation of Mayim Nukvim, the feminine waters, the arousal from below, from the divine name Sag, as we mentioned yesterday. Sag represents the light, the powerful light of Keter, of Tohu, that is accomplished by the elevation of the sparks, by deeds and speech. This is the ultimate purpose of the downward progressions of all the various worlds, that the supernal light be revealed below, down here in this world. And not that the inferior level be elevated, for this elevation can only be momentary until further descent. In other words, momentary, it is important to elevate. And what type of elevation is going to say the elevation of the vessels to the higher lights, which is the elevation of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, but not the elevation of the light itself. What does it mean? It says on Shabbos and Yom Kippur, this is the world is being elevated. That means not just the light, the world itself is being elevated. On Shabbos, the world is a different world. Even though we don't see it, that's our problem. We don't see it. We don't have the eyes to see it. You know, the famous story with the Ruzhiner. When he was a child, even when he was a child, it was holy. And the teacher was teaching something about Shabbos, the law about Shabbos. What happens if a person doesn't know when Shabbos is? Wakes up in the middle of the desert or something. He doesn't know when Shabbos is. And he didn't understand the question. So he asked the teacher, "What do you mean? He didn't know when Shabbos is?" He says, "Yes, he was in the middle of the desert. There was no phone, no internet, no nothing. And he doesn't know what day it is. When does he have to observe Shabbos?" He still didn't understand the question. He says, "What does that mean? On Shabbos, you look at the sky. It's a different sky. Shabbos looks different." He was able to appreciate the Shabbos. On Shabbos, there is an elevation. So that's why when we celebrate Shabbos, even though we don't see it with our eyes, we know that this is the reality. We have the elevation of the worlds. Even so, when elevation is necessary, this involves not the ascent of the light, for that would be a move towards departure, and that's not good. But specifically an elevation of the vessels towards the supernal light, Imailas Shabbos Yom Kippurim. This is the specific quality of Shabbos and Yom Kippur, at which time there is an elevation of the worlds, Aliyat HaOlamot, where the vessels are in a state of elevation toward the supernal light. But not the elevation and departures of the light, God forbid, as is written in Pri Chaim. Now, when we're talking about lights versus vessels, it says the soul, the nefesh, ruach, neshama of the soul of the person, versus the body is like lights versus the kelim. The nefesh, ruach, neshama of man relative to his physical body in this world are considered as light relative to vessels. So too, our intellectual fear and love relative to mitzvahs of action, they too are considered as light relative to vessels. So the feeling, the emotions, those are the lights, and the actual mitzvahs are the vessels. This is why Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, he offered 515 prayers, equivalent to the number, the numerical value of the Hebrew word va'es chanan, that Moshe Rabbeinu was asking, begging Hashem to allow him to enter to the Holy Land. Why was he praying so much for this? Specifically, so that he could fulfill the practical mitzvahs. And that was something that only by entering the Holy Land, one is able to fulfill all of the practical mitzvahs. So too, as regard to the physical utterance of their laws. When you study the laws of the practical mitzvahs, you also connect with the actions of the mitzvahs, and thereby drawing down the light below in this physical world. So this is the end of today's shir, and again, this is a continuation of what the Alter Rebbe explains, the importance of mitzvahs, maasiyos. Yes, it's important to do it with love and fear as well, but just mystical, Kabbalistic thinking and meditations without mitzvahs is worth nothing. It goes on the contrary. So, all the best. Mitzvah Hashem. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.